Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Saskatchewan All-Female Candidates Debate for the 2016 election. My name is Jeannie Martinson, and I'm your moderator for this morning. As I mentioned on the handout at your table, you'll see quickly the bios of our four candidates. When we asked the candidates to come this morning, we asked them to address three questions in their opening remarks. And those three questions were, what is your party's plan for increasing high school graduation rates for Aboriginal students? Secondly, how would your party create gender balance in the provincial cabinet, if in power? How do they plan to increase women in the political process? And the third question is, what is your party's plan to address the gender wage gap? So the order we will be addressing the candidates this morning is the same order that's on the back of the program. Tina Beaudry-Mallour with the Saskatchewan Party, Regina University is the area she's running in. Diana Hologroski, Green Party, running in the Regina Elphinstone Centre area. Heather McIntyre, NDP Party, running in Regina Pasqua. And lastly, Rena Sinclair, running in Regina Walsh Acres on behalf of the Liberal Party. So, Tina, would you like to come up and address the group?
So with respect to Aboriginal education, and the question that was posed to us was about retention rates and increasing the graduate rates for Aboriginal students. First of all, obviously you know that Aboriginal education is an area where there are interjurisdictional issues. So on reserve, it's the jurisdiction of the federal government. Off reserve, it's the jurisdiction of the provincial government. And then in cities, it's also part of the school boards. So we have a number of things. On the provincial side of things, for Aboriginal people off reserve, we've made a number of key investments in 2015, 2016 on education for Aboriginal people that I'm frankly quite proud of. For example, at the first level, at the adult basic education level, which is the gateway to all other levels of education, we've invested $25 million with a 62% increase before we took office. This translates into an additional 200 seats for a total program capacity of 8,780 students who will be able to get their ABE this year. And that's almost a 3,000 seat increase since we took office. So I'm very proud of that. That's a gateway, and that's very, very important. Secondly, I'm proud that we've invested funds in Aboriginal advanced education providers who are institutions governed by Aboriginal people for Aboriginal people. And those would include institutions like the Saskatchewan Institute of Technology, whose funding is up 121%, and the FNUC, whose funding is up 60% since we've taken office. So, and those are two that I feel are particularly important for Aboriginal people because they are, again, Aboriginal organizations run by Aboriginal people delivering Aboriginal education. And finally, at the third level, we provided another $350 million through the Advanced Education and the Ministry of Economy for First Nations and Métis skills training and development. For the 2015-2016 year, there will be another $56 million. So as a result of these measures, there's been a 19% increase in First Nations and Métis enrollment over the past 5 years. And while obviously people may enroll and they do not necessarily complete. And this is why the Saskatchewan Plan for Growth sets a target of reducing the difference in graduation rates between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal students by 50% by 2020. To figure out how to best do that, we've dedicated another $5.1 million for funding for ongoing initiatives that respond to the Joint Task Force on improving education and employment outcomes for Aboriginal people. So I think it is worthwhile to note that while this is a large task and there's still more work to be done, we're making progress. And as you can see, we have put both policy and money where our mouth is here. Aboriginal employment off reserve in Saskatchewan is about 12% right now, whereas back in 2006, before we took office, it was a record high of 29%. So we're making gains. And as an aside, as a recent study on the General Social Survey showed, and I think this is important to me, that Indigenous women who obtain their degree or diploma after high school earn, on average, more than not only other Aboriginal men, but also more than non-Aboriginal women. So that is a strategic policy place for us, and it's something that I'd like to see us focus on. And as a third and final point on this issue, because on-reserve education is a federal responsibility, I was particularly pleased with the election of the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, when one of the very first things that our Premier did upon the election of the new government was to send a letter to Prime Minister Trudeau and to say, on behalf of Saskatchewan, we are looking for three things. The first thing was the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. The second thing was the Energy East pipeline. And the third thing, which surprised me and I was so thrilled to see, was equity in funding for Aboriginal people on and off reserve from the federal government. And I was really thrilled to see our Premier advocate for that. And it was very important, and I think a moment I was very proud. So that's the first question. On the second question, can I go to the second question?
However you want to do it, you have the 10 minutes.
Okay, good. 10 now, good. We go 15. On the issue of the gender balanced cabinet for the Trudeau government, you know, it's really great to see another number of professional and accomplished women in the Trudeau cabinet. And I'm equally happy to see a number of professional and accomplished women serving in the critic portfolios. But to have a gender parity cabinet as a matter of policy is something that both I and my colleagues find to be frankly insulting. 64.8% of working-age women in Canada are women, a number that outpaces men. We hold 85% of all the purchasing power in our households. Here in Saskatchewan, we comprise 1/3 of all the entrepreneurs, almost 60% of graduate degree holders, and nearly 50% of PhDs. And according to a report by TD conducted earlier this year, female business owners are also leading the way on product and service innovation. My point is that we can compete. And we can compete because we are competent and we are increasingly becoming leaders. And this is key. We are a majority of the population and hold the lion's share of the household purchasing power. And therefore, we have more money and more influence than we've ever had before. I would argue that this is a strategic opportunity. I think we are undermined if we get the job just because we are women. And to reflect just momentarily on the Trudeau cabinet, the Liberals elected 184 MPs to their cabinet in October, 134 men and 50 women. Trudeau's policy ensured that every female MP had 3 times the opportunity to be in cabinet than their male counterparts. And what he did originally was to appoint 5 of those as ministers of state, which were junior ministers reporting to other ministers. Now, since that time, he has changed that, and they have, through an order in council, become full ministers. But this was done to give them both full ministerial rights and pay, but they have the same portfolio. So, for example, the Minister of La Francophonie is in an office that supports the Foreign Affairs Minister, Stéphane Dion. So I'm not terribly sure that this was a position of strength, or this is a position of strength for us. Now, that is not to discredit the really amazing women who hold the critic portfolio, or hold the cabinet portfolios in Indigenous issues, on justice, in health, who are quite formidable and impressive women. I would add economy to that, by the way. And in the World Economic Forum, Trudeau talked about asking women and asking and asking and asking again. And that is something that I know that our party has done for a fact. We've looked for people who are competent professionals in our community, and we've reached out to them. And so I'm quite proud of that. And finally, on the gender wage gap, our party, the Saskatchewan Party government, would continue on the work that is already done. You might not be aware that since 1999, we have a policy in place. It's called the Equal Pay for Equal Work of Equal Value Pay Equity Framework, which is way too long of a title. And it's been in place for 17 years. The framework covers all public sector employees, and compliance is enforced through the Public Sector Bargaining and Compensation Committee, which is a standing committee of Cabinet. The bargaining process is empowered to revisit wage gaps in the bargaining cycle. There are 5 provinces which currently have statute law on pay equity. These are Manitoba, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and Quebec. BC has a framework. Alberta doesn't even have that. Interestingly, of the provinces that have pay equity legislation, only Quebec includes the private sector. Every other province only includes the public sector. And with the exception of Nova Scotia, all the other provinces have some structure for compliance, whether that be through collective bargaining process and the Standing Committee in Saskatchewan, or the Pay Equity Commissioners, or committees established elsewhere. New Brunswick only monitors, it doesn't issue compliance orders. So there's not a lot of difference between Saskatchewan and those provinces who do have legislation at this time, with the exception of Quebec. Now, that said, there has been some discussion within the party about this issue. And I can say, with the approval of the party, by the way, that our party is open to consultation to review the stakeholders on this issue and review the current framework to see if it's still working, if it's what we still need to continue doing, or if it needs some revision and adjustments to date. And finally, I would like to say that I'm quite proud of our economic record and how our party has included women in the economic growth of the province. Among women up to 64 years of age, we have a 73.1 employment rate of women in Saskatchewan, which is well above the national average, and of 69.6%. And I point out of importance, the growing employment rates of women in Saskatchewan has been exclusively full-time work. And that pairs very nicely with our 53% increase in childcare spaces to enable those women to work full-time. And I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Our next candidate is Diana Hologroski, representing the Green Party, running in the Regina-Elphinstone area. Please help me welcome Diana.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity. There. How's that? Is that better? Sorry, I'm a shorty. Okay, on the question one, I would like to say that our government, Green Party, would consult with First Nations and Métis leaders to help develop programs aimed at increasing high school graduation rates and post-secondary education among students of First Nations and Métis ancestry, which I am one, because, well, Chief Peguis in Manitoba was one of my ancestors. His sister was married to one of my grandfathers, and I'm very proud to be one of them. And hopefully, going forward, that more Métis and Aboriginal people will get into politics or open their own businesses. I noticed there's a lot of online businesses with the Métis people. There's Mucklucks, there's Lucklucks, there's so much Aboriginal art on Facebook that's beautiful. Should check it out one day. And as for question two, our party is running a full slate of candidates, 61 candidates in this election, 30 which are female, 30 which are male, and 1 transgender. This provides our party with a gender equality pool of potential MLAs to choose from and to further construct a cabinet that is also gender balanced. So I would encourage anybody that is a woman to run for MLA or any cabinet positions. And number 3, I'm not going to speak that long. The tool that our government would use to end gender wage gap is the Guaranteed Livable Income, which is a subsidy that would be paid to every citizen of Saskatchewan whose income is below the poverty line. In order to bring their income up to the low-income cutoff, the GLI would be paid out regardless of gender and would replace social assistance.
Our third candidate is to come to the podium is Heather McIntyre, representing the NDP party in Regina Pasqua.
First of all, thank you to BPW. This is, I think, the second or third time I've done one of these political panels. The first one was municipal, and I love to see us engaging in this discussion. So here we go. Question number 1. I think for too long, Saskatchewan's First Nations students have been denied opportunities in education. Children on First Nations are funded, I think Tina mentioned, at 60% of the funding level of our kids here in the city, and that's just got to stop. On Saturday, our party committed to closing the funding gap in First Nations classrooms. Across the province, all children, regardless of who they are and where they live, will get the education they deserve. Closing this funding gap is a great step forward to equality in graduation rates. Our leader is passionate about implementing the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We know that our colonial past has greatly impacted our First Nations and Métis population, and a holistic approach is required for reconciliation. Cam's also spoken passionately about early childhood education and the need to foster better opportunities for our kids right from the beginning. Only with better early childhood education and continued opportunities for children throughout their education will we start to see better graduation rates in the future. And it's critical that we start now. Gender equity. This is a bit of a passion for me. So this one might be a little longer. I think it's important to note that the United Nations states that a critical mass of at least 30%, they recommend 30 to 35% women is needed, elected women is needed before legislatures produce public policy reflecting our priorities and before real change takes place. After the 2011 Saskatchewan election, we had 11 female MLAs, which was a dismal 18%. So we're not even a quarter of the way there. And as Tina said, we represent 52% of the population. We need our legislature to look like we do, which includes women and other diverse people. And we don't look like that right now. Lolene Burdell, a professor of political science at the U of S, noted that if we accept the incremental changes that have happened since 1991, it'll be 4 decades before we hit that critical mass of 30%. I, for one, don't think that's acceptable. And I think we've made great strides in this election. To have a more equitable society, we must include more women in decision-making roles. We hear a lot of talk about getting more women into politics. I've been around my party for a long time. We've talked about it a lot. I'm happy to say that Cam doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. More than half our candidates are women, and as we move into the legislature, gender equity will continue to be a priority of our party. Gender wage gap, these two are tied together. I really believe that. Although we do have human rights legislation to protect against gender discrimination, we know there remains big picture issues that contribute to the continuation of the gender wage gap. An important step towards gender equality is ensuring that we have more women in decision-making roles. That is elected women, that is CEOs, that is board chairs, that is all sorts of women. I know what it's like to be a working mom, and that's why I think our team with over 50% women, have I mentioned we're over 50% women, can make meaningful changes for women throughout the province. We need to build a kinder and fairer province, and part of that is ensuring access to affordable childcare. Our team recognizes the need for greater access for working parents to affordable childcare spaces. Also, we know that when the cost of living rises, it disproportionately affects women. Our tax plan changes and commitments to bringing down the cost of living are a step forward in addressing gender equity. Indigenous women, newcomer women, elderly women, and women living with disabilities all have unique experiences and can face greater burdens of inequity. As New Democrats, we acknowledge the larger social inequities and will continually push for the policies that create a stronger, fairer, and kinder province. Apparently, I didn't use my 10 minutes either. I feel like I could stay up here for a while. But I won't do that because I think the questions will be sort of an important piece. But I do want to leave you with this one quote that I heard several years ago, and I found it extremely powerful, and I hope it moves you too. It's from Michelle Bachelet, the former president of Chile. When there are few women in politics, politics changes women. But when there are many women, it's politics that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Our last speaker to come up in the panel before we move on to the Q&A is Rena Sinclair, representing the Liberal Party, running in Regina Walsh Acres. Please welcome Rena.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank everyone for coming out at 7:30 in the morning to have breakfast and to discuss politics with women. Politics with women, everyone. Look around the room. We're all involved in politics just by virtue of what we do in this society. And so our first question is a discussion on the dropout rate in education for Indigenous students. I'm an Indigenous woman. For those who don't know me, I've been running in politics since 1993. And in 93, I ran with the Liberal Party, and I was involved with Jean Chrétien, where there was a promise to do lots of really good stuff for education for the Indigenous people. And some of that did happen, and we can look at those results today across Canada and within the First Nations community on reserve. We can look at some of the great things they've done, and then we can look at where we are today. And a lot of things since that day have not transpired into good education for the Indigenous communities. If we look at what's going on in some of our schools across Canada with the First Nations community, and it was just in the news lately, is the suicide rates. And that is a real issue for me as a Nana, a mother, and someone who's worked within politics for over 20 years. We have to really start getting out there and looking at the socioeconomic reasons of why our children are not graduating. And that those issues are real. We can look at as many statistical reports, and we can look at everything that everyone tries to do to help our communities. But the truth of it is that we have to get out there and do more things as a community. And it's our responsibility as Indigenous people. And it's also all of us around this room, our responsibility to get out there and find out what they need. And what they need is they need to be able to come home to a safe environment. A lot of people don't want to say this. I can say this because I know it's tough for them out there. I know that as long as we have programs that don't deliver safe environments for our children, they are not going to be able to get the rest they need, get the food they need, go to school every morning. It's still happening. That hasn't changed. So when we look at graduation rates, we have to look at the real issues here. And those are real issues that we need to address. And we need to, as women, know that this happens. We have to know how to get in there and help out. How we do it is some of the programs that are being delivered right now with the SED program that helps some of our single parents by putting them into work so that they can make a better income and so that they're working and getting their children fed off to school, getting all the real issues taken care of. Well, those programs have not helped us. If they helped us, then we wouldn't be where we are today. I know firsthand that when I worked in Silver Sage Housing, I dealt with mothers that couldn't afford to pay for daycare. They couldn't afford to pay for the food bills, and there was nothing to help them. They were single parents. Look around at what the results are right now in the First Nations and Métis communities. The majority of our women are single parents, and they don't have what they need to get past and through to getting their own grade 12. Why do we have so many people in ABE? Because they don't have the socioeconomic needs met. They don't have what it takes to get through a week or a month. They're coming in trying to make sure they can pay their rent, that they can buy groceries, that they can get, they can't even afford to put their children in daycare. So we have latchkey children. That hasn't changed. The latchkey children are still there, and they're if you go into North Central community, you'll see it. I have a sister that's worked 30 years at Kitchener School, and she can tell all of us today that that situation is not good. And we need to like really get involved as a community to make sure that we hold governments accountable for not helping these women, because they're there and we need to give them more funding. We need to give them a hand up, not helping them out by putting them in programs or sending them to the food banks. Obviously that hasn't worked because the food bank is still here. The food bank was supposed to be around just for a stopgap, and then eventually it was going to be gone. Guess what? It's still here. And we need to take action, and I believe the people that take the action and do the really cool things are our women. So I'm appealing to everyone to make sure I'm back involved because I want to make a difference. And that's my way of making a difference. And the second question, which is about the cabinet and 50% cabinet, I believe that in 2016, we need to have a lot more women in politics. We need to have be encouraging young women to get involved in politics. And how do we do that? By being role models. How do we do that? By continuing to watch what's going on. I'm really pleased with what Justin Trudeau has done with the cabinet, and I think instead of characterizing it or looking at it as we can do more, how many people were elected, I say let's take what we have and build on it. Let's say, way to go, Justin. Let's move forward. And then we can say to our leaders in every province, let's move ahead. Let's do some really cool stuff with women. Let's get women involved outside of the workplace so they can be the role models and the leaders of tomorrow. Those are the things that I want to see happen. So I think that with the provincial Liberals, we're already moving in that direction. We're trying to get women involved wherever we can. And our third, of course, I agree with Heather when it comes to the wage gap, and it would be that we can look at the governments, both. I believe that we need to revamp the federal and the provincial government. We need to go back into the Public Service Commission, and we need to look at what's happened and really take a good look at where every job and why are some of our women that are working in government positions right now still not receiving the same salary as men. It's still happening, people. It's still going on. We still have unions, and unions were not supposed to be here forever. They were supposed to make everything better for us. So now what I would like to see is like going right through all of that, through all of the public service commissions, and really taking a good look at what we've done, and looking at the jobs today and where we should be having women that are in some of the ministerial roles, even that they're getting less money than their male counterparts. Some of those things have to be looked at, and I think that we have to really take a good look at it because we have a lot of younger women that are going to be coming up and getting involved, and we need to make sure that we are all involved in making our community a better place to work for everyone. And we can do that by offering fair wages to men and women. We need the equity. If the equity was there, we wouldn't be here. So I want to thank everyone for coming out today and for listening to my speech on what I believe is great about politics and women being in politics, and also more importantly that we should all give each other a hand for just being here and doing what we can do as women to make a difference in Saskatchewan. So thank you.
First, I'd like to thank all of the four panelists for their opening comments. I'm going to just give you 1 minute to breathe, give them 1 minute to breathe. If you've written down a question, please hold it up and we'll have someone bring those up to the front. What is your party's plan to support seniors and specifically to help them stay in their home longer?
So with respect to seniors, We have tripled the seniors' income plan since taking office in 2007. Seniors used to receive $90 a month on this, and now it's up to $270, so that's 3 times the amount. We also have created something called the Personal Care Home Benefit, which I think is a positive move in the right direction. It provides eligible seniors with monthly financial assistance to help them with the cost of living in a personalized care home, so when they go to a home. But more importantly, I think, is the pilot project that we currently have in place called the Home First program. It is a pilot that we are running, which is designed to help seniors who want to stay in their own homes for longer, but who can both have the opportunity to have visits from physicians to their homes, so that's part of the doctor's home visit program, and also a supplement for them to stay in their home as long as possible. And I'm sort of coming off. I had my second door-knocking visit with a 101-year-old woman on McNiven Avenue in my constituency who lives on her own, and who is a fascinating woman and still has, a very politically sharp mind. But that will be a big benefit to her because she wishes to continue staying in her own home. And finally, some supports for the, again, I call it the quick response, which is the quick response program for medical professionals for those seniors who do choose to stay in their home. And that is also a pilot program. So we are moving these things along in the direction. And we've also cut 112,000 people off the tax rolls. And a lot of those were lower income senior citizens, and especially women who are lower income senior citizens, because women make less money throughout their lifetime. So that's another thing that I'm quite proud of. Thanks.
Thanks, Tina. On to you, Diana.
Same question?
Yes.
Well, for seniors, we are trying to bring in a more subsidized issue with the Medicare, because of all the medications they have to buy for themselves are very expensive. And, and the subsidy isn't enough. The seniors do have to pay taxes on what they have because they don't pay taxes throughout the year. And that gets very hard on them, and as well as more seniors' homes, more subsidy for the seniors, for Medicare, for all these other things that they do need. Some can't afford to buy food because they're paying for medication. So we'd like to help them out by giving them a lower rate at medications. Thank you.
Heather?
Tina mentioned door knocking, and I have to say it's one of my favorite things. You get into some really interesting discussions, and I met with a woman in my constituency last week who was 89 years old and wanted to talk to me about what we were going to do for seniors. And so I will echo what I said to her. Affordability is a big one for seniors. They are living on fixed incomes, and so that's where our plan to reduce taxes for the majority of Saskatchewan families would help them to do that in terms of, and utility bundles and that kind of thing. We want to reinstate the seniors, and the name's going to escape me, the seniors healthcare, no, not the income supplement, the standard of care for seniors is what I'm looking for. That's really an important piece. I think that we need to know what the standard of care is for our seniors. And the healthcare, we also have announced an initiative where it's a pilot program. This is so much faster. A pilot program where it would provide paramedics with the ability to go into the home and provide care. So it's a perfect thing for seniors who aren't necessarily needing to go to the hospital and sit in the ER. And I'm going to stop because I'm going to run out of time.
Health, I think for seniors it is definitely, as all of us are aging and we look at the healthcare system, the seniors are the ones that are suffering the most. And also is because I believe we have to come up with some more innovative programs of helping doing the individual-based healthcare for our seniors, because if we look at our population right now, it's from the baby boomers, most of our population is going to be increasing with seniors, which means it's going to be a lot more money. So I think we really need to revisit a lot of the programs and make some sound decisions on helping them at home, increasing for farm care, helping them with taxes, helping them with housing. I think the housing situation for seniors really needs to be addressed because they are suffering immensely, even when we put them into Regina housing or the housing programs. The housing programs are still taking quite a bit of their income, and then they're not being able to even afford groceries. So I think that seniors is a huge thing that we have to look at. Any government across Canada now has to look at seniors because of the increase to the from the baby boomer generation.
I have two questions here that are specific to two of the parties. So we're going to ask those, first one to Tina and secondly to Heather. And then the question following that will be for all the panelists. What is your party's plan for further economic diversification in the province so that we can better weather volatility of commodity prices? So the question to Heather, the NDP has announced an additional $4 billion estimate in spending. With low resource prices, the province's economy, although still the best in the country, is at a pivotal point in time. How is the NDP planning on managing the deficit that this will create?
I don't know about the $4 billion. Our plan is fully costed, and the concept behind it is to take spending from, for example, there's been a huge amount of spending on outside consultants, and the plan is to reduce that and put that back into the services that we all require and need, and to pay for some of the things that we have put forward. As for the resources, we have to diversify this economy. Nobody can control the price of oil. Well, at least probably not in this province can we control the price of oil. So it is important that we diversify the economy. For example, the film tax credit is one of them. That project, it's a personal one for me. But it brought in much more than it cost. It was a way to diversify that economy. That money went out into the community, not just through the filmmakers spending it, but it is spending money on lumber and hotel rooms and car rentals and in businesses, so things like that. And we also have a plan, and you'll have to stay tuned, but to invest in renewables. So we're looking at diversifying that economy, and I'm not sure I answered your question, so if you want to talk to me after, I'd be happy to get you more info.
In the throne speech of 2007, Brad Wall announced mandatory treaty education for K-12 students. In partnership with the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, a treaty curriculum was developed for K-9, which was finalized in 2014. However, this funding for the Office of the Treaty Commissioner and training has been eliminated, which means the rollout really did not occur. How would your party address the needs of teachers and students to honor this important educational mandate?
Any particular order to address those? Because I have the economic diversity one as well.
No, just this one particularly.
I don't get to answer the economic diversity one?
I'll give you another 2 whole minutes for that one.
Okay, good. So
I apologize as a moderator. I was not clear. I was giving them a little heads up on the next question so they could think about that, but I realized it is early and I created confusion. So please just address the treaty education question.
Okay, well, I must confess that I'm not aware that the funding for that was pulled, and so that's something that I need to look at and address. So I guess I cannot comment fully on that at the moment. I would hope that it is in line with all of the other programs and services that we are offering and all of the initiatives. We do have the Joint Task Force on First Nations and Métis education, and at the moment I can't speak to how that fits into that. I'll have to look at it and come back on that particular question. I can't.
Thank you.
Provide much more insight. Can I answer the second one now?
Actually, we're going to start with Rena. Come from that end.
I want the second one.
So you'll speak forth to the question. What is your party's plan for further economic diversification in the province so that we can better weather the volatility of commodity prices? We'll start with Rena and move this way on the table, back to the table. So go ahead, Rena.
Our party platform.
Hold the mic a little
has
closer,
already
Rena.
been,
Thank you.
Laid out to the province of Saskatchewan, and one of the huge things that we'd like to do is resource sharing, revenue resource sharing with all communities, and especially with the First Nations community when it comes to partnerships, so that they can participate in, for example, the energy initiatives. And the other thing that we were looking at was trying to find different cost-effective ways to bring our goods to market. And to save on doing that, we were also looking at increasing the minimum wage, because the more people that are working, that are making a good living, they'll be putting more money back into our tax base, but it will also help us to create more jobs and to do more, get more done in our different sectors across the board. So that's some of the things that we're looking at doing within the Saskatchewan Liberals.
Thank you. So please go ahead.
Okay, well, as I've sort of already answered this, so in the interest of getting more questions answered, I will just say one thing that I did forget to say, and that I wanted to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 4 territory, and I apologize, I had meant to do that at the beginning of my opening remarks, and I think I did address the diversity question, so I'll just pass it along.
Well, I believe our prices are way sky high, and we have to bring them down a little bit lower. And to bring in the GLI for everybody would be the best thing that we could do as a party.
Thank you, Diana. And last to you, Tina.
Our party, as you know, we have weathered this storm far better than our neighbors next door to us in Alberta, and this is a result of focusing on diversifying our economy. We have a very vibrant manufacturing sector here in the province of Saskatchewan, which we are quite proud of, and we spend a lot of time, particularly on the agri-value sector of things, marketing those goods across the world. Saskatchewan Trade and Export Partnership has spent a lot of time and a lot of energy doing that, and we've supported them well to do that work. We just recently, in our platform last week, released news about our patent and innovation laws, and that is, again, we are working towards building the knowledge sector of our economy, which will, I hope, expand opportunities for research and development, innovation, and entrepreneurialism. I've already mentioned that I've already mentioned our agri-value sector, but I should point out that we are the largest agri-value sector of the market in Canada. So Saskatchewan has done extremely well on that, and it has helped us offset some of the resource issues. And finally, we are also the most energy diverse portfolio in Canada. And so we have been, and I would like to see continue, the growth of our diverse sources of energy, solar, wind, and so on. And the Premier has said that in the next 20 years that we will have 50% of Sask Energy's portfolio will come from renewable resources. And I'm very pleased to see that. So we are making great strides, I think, in trying to diversify that portfolio and moving things along. So thank you.
Thank you, Tina. We're going to do the next question. Heather, we'll start with you and then go this way, and then Rena will answer. I'm just, it's not fair to always be the first person. And I am trying to be fair. So here's the question. It's on infrastructure. We're anticipating an influx of money from the federal government for infrastructure. How should Saskatchewan spend this money, and what type of projects should we focus on?
Well, I'm pleased that the federal government is going to be making up some of the infrastructure deficits of late. As a former municipal candidate, I can tell you that the number one issue on the doorstep municipally is, you guessed it, infrastructure, specifically the streets that we all drive on every day. So I, as a former municipal candidate, and I need to say right here, I'm speaking as Heather, not the New Democrats, for this one, I would like to see us sort of start to make up that deficit that the municipalities have. The second one would be to start building our own schools and not do them in that P3 model. That's something that I feel pretty strongly about. We know it's cheaper, and we should own those properties, in my opinion. So, and highways, highways, highways. We've spent more money in the last 8 years on highway, and we've paved less kilometers. And so we need to look at that and sort of remedy the way we're doing that. So 2 of the 3 are roads, and there's lots of other areas too. But that's the top of mind for infrastructure, the municipalities, the highways, and bringing the schools back into our own portfolio. Thanks.
There will be a budget on March 22nd by the federal government, and so we will see what that infrastructure funding is going to look like and whether or not the Build Canada Fund will continue under the current model, which has P3s in it. But let's be clear about what those P3s are. Currently, the P3 projects for here in the province of Saskatchewan include, I'll just make sure I don't, the Children's Hospital, the 15 new long-term care facilities for seniors, the Moose Jaw Hospital, the Saskatchewan Hospital in North Battleford. So those are all P3 projects, and they're all very, very important. I keep hearing about class sizes, but building new schools is going to help at least relieve some of the pressure of some of our schools. The long-term care facilities are certainly much needed for our seniors here in the province. The Moose Jaw Hospital is long overdue, and the hospital in North Battleford is also long overdue. So those are important infrastructure investments. On the issue of highways, we announced the Highways 2020 plan, and so as you well know, I'm sure especially if you have a cottage along Last Mountain Lake, we will finally be doing Highway 322, which a lot of people have complained about, and rightly so, so there will be significant investments there. And to the infrastructure piece, I want to add housing, because we have spent a lot of time investing in housing and increasing the housing stock here in the city of Regina in particular, but across the province, and that has helped reduce our vacancy rates, increased our vacancy rates from 1.7 where they were earlier to now 5.6 and 5.7, which has also reduced the amount of rents that a lot of people are paying, and I think it is a very important investment that I'd like to see us go through. And finally, on the P3 issue, I do want to say that it's difficult to continue spending in the way that we would like to, especially on infrastructure, without having private sector partners or increasing taxes. And so certainly the plan that we have in place right now to use P3s is an innovative way of increasing some of our infrastructure needs without being an overly burdensome tax burden for people. So there.
Thank you, Tina. And lastly, Rena, on this question.
So our party is looking at much the same thing as the NDP and the SAS party. However, we're also very thankful that the infrastructure is going to be in the budget, and that Trudeau's government will be announcing on the 22nd of March. And we want to look at things like, again, if we're going to look at private sector partnerships, we've definitely got to consult with the First Nations communities, because that infrastructure, if you look at some of the reserves in Saskatchewan, their infrastructure is, the housing needs to be looked at. They have to have better roads going into the reserves, and that includes the small towns. So the highways are important, but we have to look at the rural communities too when we're looking at infrastructure. And the city of Regina, and for the cities like for Saskatoon as well, we have to look at definitely the roads. But I think that we need to look at infrastructure in a bigger way when it comes to doing more partnerships to save us money. And I think if we do partnerships in infrastructure with whoever we can partner with, private industry, First Nations communities, Métis communities, that's how I look at Saskatchewan, and that we can all do a lot of really great things together with the money that's coming in from the federal government.
Thank you, Rena. So now it's always an exciting thing for me to look at all these questions and try to figure out which ones I should. And because we really wanted to give a balance this morning, because of course we want to talk about women's issues, and you'll recognize that 2 of the 3 questions this morning that we asked the candidates to address in their early 10 minutes were issues around the gender wage gap and issues around women's participation in politics. But we also want to make sure that you understand the 4 candidates' perspective on the bigger and broader economic issues. And so one of the questions that I want to address now is, what do you, and I'll just, Tina, are you okay to, we'll go this way again? Yeah. Okay. What do you see as the key environmental issue in the province, and what would you do to address it?
Okay, well, for clarification purposes, it's not me, it's our party. Because we all in Canada adhere to party discipline, and so we have to represent the issues of our party. So our party is, as I said earlier, I think the best answer to your question is about the energy diversity portfolio. We do have a commitment to increase our renewables to 50% by under Sask Energy. That will include wind and solar. We know we have lots of wind, and apparently we have the most sunshine days per year as well. And so those are two strategic opportunities for us, and I'm pleased to see that those will move forward.
Thank you. Diana? The question again is, what do you see as the key environmental issue in the province, and what would you/your party do to address them?
Well, we as a Green Party are totally green. So I would think like wind energy, solar energy, and a lot of training in those fields. Like, for example, say the oil sands are all shut down. Let's retrain, this is my opinion, our oil sands working people into solar and wind energy, which is more beneficial and cleaner for all of Saskatchewan. But that's me personally.
Okay, over to you, Heather.
This is a good one because wind, solar, those are our big answers. I think it's important as we start to expand those programs and start, but this is a two-pronged approach. We have to start looking at ways to become less reliant on the fossil fuels, because one day they're going to run out. We all know that. That's not to say we're going to do it tomorrow, but we need to learn to do it cleaner, and we need to start expanding those renewables. We do, I believe, live in the sunniest place in North America. I think Tina's absolutely right. So solar is an obvious one. And wind is also, especially if you were door knocking on Saturday with any of your candidates, wowza. But wind we have to be careful with because we have to make sure that we're not putting it right next to really important natural resources and that will tamper with our ecosystems, because then we're just sort of moving into a whole different area of trouble. So we absolutely support wind, solar, and reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. So I'll leave it at that.
Marina?
With the Saskatchewan Liberals, we're going to be taking the lead from the federal Liberals, just in having the meetings that they had in Vancouver a week ago, and that is looking at different ways to help our communities with being able to afford all of the costs that it's going to take to get all the environmentally friendly, because of who Saskatchewan is with potash, coal mines. There's a lot of people that are dependent on those industries. So when we're looking at that, we got to make sure that we're not going to be losing jobs. We got to make sure that we are looking to those communities, to those rural communities, on what will happen if they have close a coal mine in Estevan. Where will the jobs, where will the people go? So we need to really look at environmentally friendly jobs and ways of doing it. So I think that we should be looking towards the federal government to help us to bridge the gap and to assist in the funding measures on getting more money from the federal government to help Saskatchewan, especially with all of the deficits that we're going to be going through with the oil prices. So there's a lot of things that we can do, and we're going to be looking towards the federal Liberals to bridge that gap.
Thank you. This is going to be our last question, and then after this last question, the candidates will all each have another 2 minutes to just give us any final thoughts that they have, whether it's about their political platform within their party, whether it's about who they are as a candidate. It's totally up to them as to what they use those last 2 minutes for. But first, I'm going to ask them the question, and then, just to clarify, then they will have a separate 2 minutes to do that.
Since we haven't been following instructions very well.
Okay.
It's okay.
Many women say that they would enter politics either federally or provincially if it wasn't for the disrespectful way MLAs treat each other during question period. Personally, What do you think can be done to bring a more civil discourse to the political process? And I'm going to start with Diana. And Diana will go Diana, Heather, Rena, and then final with you, Tina.
I think that all political parties, not naming one on one, but stop bashing each other. You know, it's very downhearting and it hurts. Like when one party bashes another, I don't think that's very fair and very right. Speak your mind and just speak your platform. Sorry, thank you.
Over to you, Heather.
Last March, Carla Beck, Alina Young, myself, Tina, we were all candidates by this point, and we went and we watched the budget. And leaving aside what was in the budget, we watched the question period followed. And I think the four of us from different political stripes, obviously, sort of walked out of there shaking our heads. If you were a teacher and your classroom behaved that way, you wouldn't stand for it. As a parent at the dinner table, you wouldn't stand for it. So, again, this is Heather speaking, not the New Democrats necessarily, but I think that we need to bring a level of civility to our legislatures, and I believe the way to do that is to elect more women. It will change the discourse. It will stop talking about what we're wearing and what we look like. It will push debate. I believe that more women in the legislature will allow us to cross party lines and work cooperatively. The very first time I met Tina was a discussion over running municipally. Didn't matter that our politics were different. It's about getting more of us at the table and having that discussion and changing the discourse. And I think that the key to changing that is electing more women, and we are well on our way in this election. I am curious, I don't have the stats, but I would argue that we probably have more women running in this provincial election than we ever have before, and it's my hope that we will send more of them to the legislature. So that's how you change that.
Thank you, Rena.
I think that we already have in place rules of order in every political, in municipal, provincial, and federal politics. So we have to do one important thing, and that is to enforce those rules. And so I think that if we start putting in place something like giving them a fine for their behavior, everybody starts to listen or pay more attention when it costs them money, just like parking tickets, speeding tickets. It does curb the behavior. And something I would tell my grandsons is a timeout. I wish we could do that. Have a timeout. And as mothers, we all know what that means. So, but that's what I think that we should do. We should really look at getting them to follow the rules. And that's why we have speakers. The speakers of the House are there to do that. And those kinds of things, and maybe implementing a fine would help.
Oh, Jeannie, can I just add one thing? I want to make it clear that when I said the behavior was awful, it was on both sides of the aisle. I didn't make that clear in my response, but
I think we can agree with that, that it's a condition that is uniformly needs to be addressed. And lastly, Tina, on the question.
Well, first, there's a question about the effectiveness of QP in its current construction, question period. I'm not sure that the current construct of question period is particularly amenable to reasoned, thoughtful debate. So that's the first issue. As a political scientist, I'm kind of a junkie about these things. And so I am interested in some of the reforms that have been put forward about question period, and I think they might go a long way to restoring civility. I, too, am appalled by the lack of decorum on both sides. But I don't think that women will necessarily bring an elevated level of decorum to question period because they are women. Because there are women elected currently who do not have that level of decorum and civility on both sides. And so I don't think it's an inherent female quality. I think it is a personal quality. And so as a person and as a candidate, and I'll say this as a person and as a candidate, I think that if we are to truly make a difference as women in public leadership roles, we have a responsibility in our own behavior to model the behavior that we want to see. And so, I consider Heather someone that I can talk to and relate to, and we've always been respectfully different from each other, and I appreciate that. And that level of professionalism and decorum and civility is something that I value. It's something that I want to see in our leadership. We can disagree, but we can disagree in a respectful way, and if enough of us begin to do that, male or female, transgendered, if we all begin to do that, then we will change the culture. But I think we have to make a personal commitment to restrain ourselves from participating in that behavior. And I also think we perhaps need to look at how question period currently functions and see if there are ways we can improve it to make it a more civil discussion. Because I would completely agree. When children are sitting upstairs in the gallery, I am mortified that is what they see. And I think, well, no wonder none of them want to run for office. This looks horrible. And nobody wants to be that kind of attack when at the same time all we're talking about in schools is bullying behavior. So it seems to me a contradiction.
Thank you, Tina.
There, I just made it.